Welcome back everybody, and I hope you're ready for some thriller stories that will give you the chills with the top 10 creepy unsolved mysteries in Australia. Number 10. The Luna Park Ghost Train Fire. In June 1979, two parents decided to take their sons to the Luna amusement park. At the end of the night, the two boys decided on the ghost train and rushed over there with their father while the mother took a stroll around. When she returned a few minutes later, she walked right into a nightmare. Smoke was rising from the train as it raced down the track. Park employees were trying desperately to get everyone off the train each time it emerged from a tunnel, but the husband, two boys and four other passengers didn't make it out. Later on, the wife came across some of the photographs taken during that day and stopped to stare at one in particular. A picture of her son, which was the last one ever taken, shows the little boy shyly posing next to an intimidating figure wearing a demonic-looking mask. They were unable to locate the man later, and no trace has been found until today. Number 9. The disappearance of Rihanna Baro. In October 1992, 12-year-old Rihanna Baro had planned to walk to the local mall to buy a card for her American pen pal who she writes to. She normally would have taken the bus, but they were on strike that day and Rihanna didn't want to wait. Her mother agreed that she could go to the mall, said goodbye to her daughter, and headed off to work. Several people had witnessed Rihanna walking outside just before lunchtime. No one had seen her after that. Rihanna's mother arrived home that afternoon to find the card for her daughter's friend lying on the dining room table and a record on the floor. The TV was on very loud in an empty room. She looked all over the house and no sign of Rihanna. She called her repeatedly but no reply, and even asked the neighbors, but no one had seen her. Until today, her disappearance remains a mystery and no one knows what happened to her. Number 8. Wailing at Willunga Waterhole. In 1941, a man had built a hut on the banks of the Willunga Waterhole for him and his wife to live in. The wife would stay alone while the husband worked late at night. One night, he came home to find her very frightened and paranoid. The wife only said that she heard paralyzing, terrifying screams and wailing coming from the waterhole. The man had assumed it was just a bird or owl and wasn't worried at all until a few weeks later, when he found her very terrified once again, and she was adamant that she heard the wailing and screaming rising from the waterhole. The man took her away and never returned there, and warned some of his colleagues about it who also had heard the wailing one night as they went to see if it was true. On their first night, the men were woken suddenly by a deafening wailing. The men threw their things together and hightailed out of there. Investigations have been made, but the cause of the wailing at the Willunga Waterhole remains unexplained. Number 7. Tainan North Serial Killings. In December 1980, a man dumping animal remains in Tainan North came across something that looked to him to be human bones. He immediately notified local police, who then proceeded to uncover the remains of 3 women. 2 years later, the remains of a 4th victim was found in the same area, who went missing just a month before the first remains were found. One of the victims, 14-year-old Catherine, was due to report for an afternoon shift at the local supermarket. Catherine spent some time with her friends at her boyfriend's house that day before heading off to work. Little did she or any of her loved ones know that she would never return home. Her body was dumped next to that of 73-year-old Bertha, who had been abducted 18 days before. 18-year-old Anne-Marie disappeared in October 1980, and her remains were found near Catherine and Bertha. Despite naming suspects over the years and linking the serial killings to more murders committed in Frankston, police have been unable to solve either set of crimes. Number 6. Missing Cessna VH MDX. On August 9, 1981, a Cessna 210 was going from Proserpine to Sydney with 4 men on board. It was just a regular flight for 52-year-old pilot Michael Hutchins until the plane reached Torrey and he saw bad weather approaching. He requested permission to fly through restricted airspace to avoid the storm, but he must have decided his plane could handle it, because he didn't wait for permission. Instead, he continued on the original flight route. Just after passing entry, a vacuum pump responsible for powering the Horizon simulator and heading indicator had failed. This meant Hutchins had no sense of direction, flying west toward the mountains instead of the coastline he was aiming for. Having to battle strong winds and ice along with vacuum pump failure would be trying for any pilot. The extreme turbulence seemed to be the last straw. The last response from Hutchins was a terrified 5,000 before complete silence. Air controllers could not find the emergency beacon or anything on the radar. Land and air searches involving hundreds of police, rescuers, and volunteers lasted 9 days but yielded no sign of the plane. Another extensive search a month later only raised more unanswered questions. The location of the plane and the fate of the passengers on board remains a mystery. Number 5. Mauri Man. No one knows who covered the drawing of the Mauri Man, first witnessed by a tour guide in 1998, in the Australian desert. The drawing stretched over 4 kilometers and depicted an indigenous man. Tourism spiked as word got out, but this angered some indigenous Australians who wished the drawing would simply disappear. Strangely enough, that is exactly what happened. A news article in 2015 features photographs showing an almost blank terrain where the Mauri Man once was. When the drawing was first discovered, conspiracy theorists suggested the Mauri Man might have been created by the military or by UFOs. Some believe that eccentric artist Bardius Goldberg was responsible for the drawing, as he had once mentioned that he wanted to create a sculpture that would be visible from space. Goldberg passed away in 2002 before he could confirm or deny the rumors. The mystery remains as to who the creator of the Mauri Man was and what the purpose of the massive drawing was supposed to be. Number 4. Pajama Girl murder. In 1934, a farmer who had just purchased a prize bull a few kilometers outside Albury was strolling home with the animal when he noticed a bulky object stuck inside a stormwater pipe. Upon inspection he discovered it was the body of a young woman who appeared to have been beaten, burned, and shot. She was wearing yellow pajamas and had a towel wrapped around her head. Because of the lack of progress made by the police in identifying the victim, her body was preserved in formalin and put on display. It took 10 years for the authorities to come to the conclusion that the murder victim was Linda Agostini. Evidently, the first dental record analysis was incorrect, but another attempt at dental identification a decade later seemingly confirmed the identity. Shortly after the announcement, Linda's husband confessed to her murder and pleaded self-defense. He was sentenced to 10 years behind bars. However, it seems that the woman in the yellow pajamas and Linda Agostini may have been two different people. A book written by Richard Evans claims the two murder victims did not have the same eye color, breast size, or nose shape. A play called The Pajama Girl was later made based on these same claims. Number 3. Mr. Cruel. 10-year-old Sharon Wills and 13-year-old Nicola Liners were abducted from their homes in 1988 and 1990 respectively. Their abductor freed Sharon after 18 hours of holding her captive and Nicola after 50 hours. The evidence supplied by the two young girls soon convinced police that the same perpetrator was responsible for a host of other crimes, including abductions and attacks on several other boys and girls in the Hampton and Lower Plenty areas. Dubbed Mr. Cruel, the man the Victoria Police Department continues to look for was also believed to be behind a break-in at a house in Templestowe in 1991, when 13-year-old Carmine Chan was kidnapped. She wasn't lucky enough to escape or be let go by Mr. Cruel. Her remains were found a year after her disappearance. She had been shot in the head multiple times. Because of the lack of evidence in the Carmine case, police cannot be completely sure that Mr. Cruel was behind her murder, but they believe he is the most likely suspect. In 2013, the police were still working on a list of more than 20 suspects. They had revisited each of their homes 2 years before when 13-year-old Syria Bung Siri Boone disappeared on the way to school in Baronia. She remains missing. A prime suspect, Robert Keith Knight, committed suicide in 2013 before he was due to face charges of possession of child pornography. The complete lack of DNA or any other forensic evidence has ensured that the identity of Mr. Cruel remains a mystery. Number 2. Disappearance of A1 Submarine HMAS A1 had only been in Sydney for 2 days in 1914 when news came that Serbia had disregarded an ultimatum from Austria and that war was imminent. Just a few months later, Britain and Germany were at war and Australia had no choice but to enter the war as well. A1 and other warships were ready in August 1914 and sailed out on their way to Queensland on September the 2nd. Once the submarines arrived at the destination, they were to receive orders to set up a joint occupation of Rabaul, Papua New Guinea. The occupation went as planned. On September the 14th, A1 and destroyer Parramatta set out from the Rabaul harbour for a patrol of Cape Gazelle. Both ships were to stay within viewing range of each other and ensure they re-entered the harbour before nightfall. At some point in the mid-afternoon, Parramatta lost sight of A1, which had earlier requested information about visibility. The crew assumed that A1 was headed back to Rabaul and headed there as well but didn't see the submarine as they went. When by 8 p.m. A1 still hadn't returned or been heard from, a search was launched. The search stretched as far as New Ireland and New Britain but yielded no results. A1 was officially missing. Theories ranged from a German attack to a mechanical breakdown causing the submarine to be swept out to the open sea, and even an internal explosion. A1 has never been found. Number 1. Rackman. On August the 11th, 1994, fisherman Mark Peterson set out on his boat and moved slowly up the Hawkesbury River just north of Sydney. It was a lovely day, and Mark became excited. He felt a heavy tug on his fishing net. It was sure to be a good haul of fish. But when he drew his net from the water, it contained a heavy piece of steel fashioned into a crucifix. Tied to it was the remains of a human body. Shocked, Peterson immediately called the police, who examined the remains and confirmed they were human. A forensic pathologist noted that the remains were of a male between 21 and 41 and that the bones were anatomically arranged on the crucifix. The victim's entire body and head was wrapped in plastic. In addition to the plastic, there was wire wrapped around the head and torso. The man has yet to be identified, partly because his fingerprints had literally been eroded by the water. He was given the nickname Rackman. Police are still working on several leads, including one from the public that stated that Rackman may be Joe Biviano, a drug dealer who had gone missing from Drummoyne in 1993. They are still hoping to match the DNA. The remains of Rackman are still lying in the morgue. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share, like and comment. See you next time.